Theodore Roosevelt once walked into a room full of his biggest political enemies. Within minutes, they were hanging on his every word. What happened? Did he suddenly become more attractive or intelligent? Not at all. Roosevelt had discovered something that modern neuroscience now proves. Charisma isn't about personality, it's about triggering specific responses in other people's brains. And here's the fascinating part. These same neurological triggers are still working today, whether you know it or not. Most people think charisma is this mysterious quality some folks are just born with, but that's completely wrong. Scientists at Harvard Medical School discovered that when charismatic people speak, they literally activate mirror neurons in their listeners' brains. These mirror neurons make other people unconsciously mimic not just the speaker's emotions, but their entire mental state. Think about that for a moment. Charisma is actually a predictable neurological response. The breakthrough came when researchers used brain imaging to study charismatic leaders. They found 3 specific triggers that consistently activated these mirror neurons. Let's repeat that. There are 3 specific triggers that you can learn and use. And here's the breakdown of each one. The first trigger is called asymmetrical vulnerability. Here's what this means. Winston Churchill was famous for his powerful speeches during World War II. But here's something most people don't know. He deliberately included small, strategic admissions of weakness in his most important addresses. When he spoke about Britain's dark hours, he didn't just project strength. He admitted fear, uncertainty, even moments of doubt. But here's the key. He always paired these vulnerabilities with evidence of his competence. Why did this work? Neuroscientists call this the beautiful imperfection principle. When someone shows a small flaw alongside obvious strengths, it creates what psychologists term approach motivation in the listener's brain. The vulnerability makes them feel safe, while the competence makes them feel inspired. Churchill understood this instinctively. By showing just enough weakness to seem human, he made his strength feel more authentic and approachable. This point deserves emphasis because it's counterintuitive. Strategic vulnerability actually increases charismatic power. It's not about being weak, it's about showing carefully chosen human moments that make your strengths more believable. The second trigger is future state bridging. Martin Luther King Jr. mastered this technique in his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. But here's what made it neurologically powerful. He didn't just describe a better future. He used specific language patterns that made listeners feel they were already living in that future reality. Notice how he said, "I have a dream," rather than, "I hope someday." He described scenes so vividly that people's brains began processing them as current experiences rather than distant possibilities. This taps into what neuroscientists call temporal displacement. The human brain has trouble distinguishing between vivid imagination and actual memory. When King painted pictures of children of all races playing together, listeners' brains began creating neural pathways as if these scenes were already happening. This made the future feel inevitable rather than uncertain. Again, this crucial point bears repeating. Future state bridging makes people feel they're already living in the improved reality you're describing. You're not asking them to hope for change. You're helping their brains experience that change as already underway. The third trigger is cognitive load reduction. Nelson Mandela was a master of this technique. He faced one of the most complex political situations in modern history, dismantling apartheid without triggering civil war. But instead of overwhelming people with political complexity, Mandela consistently transformed complicated issues into simple, universal human stories. He talked about children, families, and shared dreams rather than policy details and constitutional frameworks. Here's the neuroscience behind this. The human brain can only process about 7 pieces of information simultaneously. When you overload someone's cognitive capacity, their mirror neurons actually shut down. But when you reduce complex ideas to their emotional core, you free up mental resources for connection and empathy. Mandela understood that the brain craves effortless understanding. This point deserves emphasis again. Cognitive load reduction means making complex emotions and ideas feel simple and accessible. You're not dumbing things down, you're making them emotionally clear. Now, how do you apply these 3 triggers in real conversations? When you're presenting an idea or trying to connect with someone, start by sharing a small, relevant challenge you faced. That's your asymmetrical vulnerability. Then help them feel they're already experiencing the positive outcome you're discussing. That's future state bridging. Finally, reduce your main message to one clear, emotional truth. That's cognitive load reduction. The key insight here is that charisma isn't about being perfect or naturally gifted. It's about understanding how human brains respond to specific communication patterns. Roosevelt, Churchill, King, and Mandela all intuitively used these same neurological triggers. Now you know the science behind their success. Remember, asymmetrical vulnerability builds trust through strategic openness. Future state bridging makes positive change feel inevitable. Cognitive load reduction ensures your message creates a connection rather than confusion. These aren't personality traits, they're learnable techniques that trigger predictable brain responses. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and see you in the next video.